I don't always run, but when I do it naked. The quote of Broncos quarterback Peyton Manning after the 51-48 intriguing win over the Dallas Cowboys on October 6th. Why did Peyton say this? The Broncos scored with like 2 minutes to go, and Peyton ran for his first touchdown in over 5 years. The play callers actually power right, which would have been the handoff to Ronnie Hillman up the middle. But Peyton changed the play call without anyone else knowing, not even running back, not even offensive line. Instead of handing out to Ronnie Hillman, he pulled the ball into his belly and ran it like this into a boot formation. And they call it naked because Peyton was out here isolated all alone while everyone else on the field was over here. My Peyton Manning jersey represents Peyton as the all-time favorite player, and my Broncos as the second favorite team in the NFL behind the Colts. The 2013-2014 Denver Broncos is one of the best teams in the NFL, if not the best team in the NFL. The current Denver Bronco offense is ranked number 1 in the NFL, averaging 36 points a game and throwing for over 300 yards a game, while also rushing for 107 yards a game. The Denver Bronco run defense is ranked 3rd in the NFL, giving up 82 yards a game, while the pass defense is dreadful this year, ranked 30th in the NFL. The Denver Broncos have a history of winning. The Broncos have a total record of 476 wins, 382 losses, and 10 ties, while the Broncos have a total playoff record of 18 wins and 17 losses. The Broncos have had 6 Super Bowl appearances despite only winning 2. They won 2 in 97 and 98. The number 1 coach in Broncos history is Mike Shanahan, who led the team to 138 wins and 86 losses while coaching in Denver. The number 1 quarterback in Denver history is John Elway, who has thrown for over 50,000 yards while he played at Denver, and leading the Denver Broncos to 2 Super Bowl championships in 1997 and 1998. Peyton Manning is trying to become the best quarterback in Broncos history by winning championships with them. The current Denver Broncos is unstoppable. They are putting up huge numbers despite losing to our very own Indianapolis Colts. The Denver Broncos still put up 33 points on the Indianapolis Colts, which is huge because that's still the most in the NFL above all the averages. Although the Broncos did put up 33 points, the Broncos defense did awful against the Colts, letting up 39 to Andrew Luck in the offense. The Broncos' offense as a whole is shattering records. Peyton is throwing for 2,900 yards by the halfway mark of the season. If he keeps going at this pace, he'll throw for over 5,900 yards by the end of the season, which alone is an NFL record. Peyton has also thrown for 29 touchdowns this year so far, which is also an NFL record, surpassing Tom Brady for the most in the first half of the season, which he had 28 and Peyton has 29. At this rate, he'll be at 58 touchdowns, but it's very unlikely he can keep holding this pace. The Denver Bronco wide receivers with Demaryius Thomas, Wes Welker, and Eric Decker are phenomenal, making great catches for the balls that Peyton has not thrown the best, and also for running crisp routes and breaking away from the defenders when it's needed. If Demaryius Thomas, Wes Welker, and Eric Decker can keep doing this, they will become the best trio of wide receivers in NFL history, as the NFL has, for the best trio on one team, 3,900 yards total per 3 receivers in 1 year. Peyton already is at 2,200 with these guys and can go way farther because he's only halfway through the season, so he could be past 400 if he keeps going. Not only does the pass offense lead the Broncos, but the running game also does as well. Only averaging 107 yards a game, which is not very high in the NFL, but still the running game opens up for the pass game because if you can't run, you can't pass. The leading rusher for the Denver Broncos is Sean Moreno, who only averages 57 yards a game, which is not a lot at all. But when you have 3 Pro Bowl running backs on your team, you need to share the carries. The other 2 Pro Bowl running backs are Ronnie Hillman and Monte Ball, who are both great running backs. The Denver Broncos have had problems this year fumbling the ball. Each Denver Bronco running back has fumbled the ball at least once, while Ronnie Hillman and Monte Ball have both fumbled the ball twice. All 4 of their fumbles total have been in key game critical situations. The biggest fumble of the year was against the Indianapolis Colts, when Denver had the ball on the 2-yard line, 6 feet away from scoring a touchdown. Peyton drove down the field in 43 seconds and threw deep passes to Wes Welker and Demaryius Thomas. As they were 2 yards away from scoring, Peyton handed the ball off to Ronnie Hillman, and Ronnie Hillman fumbled the ball 1 foot away from the end zone. This changed the whole momentum of the game. The Broncos could have taken the first lead of the whole game, and been able to beat the Indianapolis Colts and upset them in Indy. When he fumbled, Andrew Luck took the Indianapolis Colts down the field 86 yards to score a touchdown to seal the game for Indy and upset Peyton Manning and the Broncos. The Denver Bronco defense, although the offense is unstoppable, the Denver Bronco defense is doing pretty well also. The Denver defense is only giving up 14 points a game, and they're very solid, plugging holes and gaps, and opponents' running backs cannot break through. The Denver defense is ranked third in the NFL for run defense, only giving up 82 yards a game, but the Denver pass defense is ranked 30th, giving up 299 yards a game, which is killing the team as a whole. Led by returning linebacker Von Miller, the defense can be great if they really wanted to. Another great key player to the Denver Bronco defense is second-year man out of Kentucky, Danny Trevathan, who is doing a fabulous job this season of becoming a leader and taking role over Von Miller. The passing defense is awful, led by veteran cornerback Champ Bailey, who's returning from a foot injury. He is not on his game, and neither are all the other safeties in the NFL or even on the Broncos. This year, the worst statistics for the cornerback, squat, safeties, and just pass defenses in NFL history, giving up the most yards ever in the NFL. Although the numbers don't lie, the Broncos do have a terrible pass defense. The Broncos do have 13 interceptions this year, which leads the NFL because the Broncos are very athletic and can make key reads and are over-aggressive, which gets them killed in big plays, but also can make up for that in interceptions and turnovers. Overall, the Broncos are one of the best teams in the National Football League, playing in a decently hard division with the Kansas City Chiefs, the Oakland Raiders, and the San Diego Chargers. The Broncos are currently second in the division behind the 9-0 Kansas City Chiefs, but these teams play in 2 weeks in Denver to seal district, and then they'll play again 2 weeks after that to even seal it again to break the tiebreaker if the Broncos win. If the Broncos can keep clicking on offense and can get their defense together, the Broncos have a very good shot at winning the Super Bowl. And then this is a picture of the 2012 team. I couldn't find one of the 2013 team. And then this is Peyton, and this is what he does best. He's more than just a quarterback. He's a mastermind of what he does, and he makes defenses pay for it. The defense thinks they know the play, and Peyton will change it, and then Peyton will burn them in deep balls, or just burn them on his feet like he did against the Cowboys. This is the two best quarterbacks in Broncos history, John Elway and Peyton Manning, shaking hands as Peyton signed a contract of $107 million to play for the Denver Broncos. This is a picture I actually took after the Bronco Colts game with my iPhone. I thought it was a really cool picture, so I put it on a slideshow. And then this is my picture of me and my friend Trent at the game right before. So, thank you.
Okay, by a show of hands, how many of you enjoy a great story, whether it's from a book or a movie? That's what I thought. All of us enjoy a great story. Again, by a show of hands, how many of us have seen or read the Harry Potter series or the Star Wars series? See, that's pretty good. You may be asking, what could these have in common besides the fact that they are great stories? Well, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is that they follow the hero's journey. The hero's journey, by definition, according to John Campbell, is a hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. John Campbell was the one who discovered this theory in monomyth. He is a Columbia graduate and was a former professor at Sarah Lawrence College. What he did was he was able to break down a common element from each story that has a hero within it. By understanding the hero's journey monomyth that Campbell created, we will be able to greater understand many of the books and films that we've seen. And I think it too is fascinating how the hero's journey plays into each story. When I was in high school, I took a class my senior year all about mythology, and this me to research more into this, and I found it fascinating. I think it has changed my own personal movie viewing and story reading. After I learned the process, I researched John Campbell's own book. He wrote a book called The Hero with 10,000 Faces. And Anthony Ubelhor, who is a Kentucky University professor, wrote a lecture about his book, and it breaks down the hero's journey even more. Basically, the hero's journey can be broken down into three main sections: the departure, the initiation, and the return. Each of these sections have subsections that go along with these. They do not always follow an exact order, but for the most part, they follow along pretty closely with each story that we see or read. Today I'll be taking you through a journey through this Harry Potter and Star Wars series. And first I'll start with the departure phase. The first phase is the call to adventure, and this is the first sign that the hero will encounter a journey. In the Harry Potter series, it starts with letters. Harry receives these letters, and as they call it, like he's got something greater planned for his life, despite the fact that he doesn't know what it is yet. With Luke Skywalker, it's the fact that R2-D2 delivers the hologram of Princess Leia saying, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." The next phase is the refusal of the call. For Harry Potter, it would be, "I can't be a wizard. I can't do it." And for Luke Skywalker, it'd be, "No, I have to help the harvest, so I can't leave my family, my aunt and uncle." The next would be the supernatural aid. Supernatural aid is most often an old man who is a mentor figure to the hero. In Star Wars, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi to Luke. He becomes Luke's mentor and teaches him the ways of the Force. In Harry Potter, it's Dumbledore. He goes through and he watches over Harry Potter and protects him in certain ways, and while also teaching him ways of wizardry. The next phase of the departure is the crossing of the first threshold. This puts the hero into the new world. In Harry Potter, this could be when he crossed onto the platform 9 3/4 to board the train to go to Hogwarts. Or it could also be when he enters Diagon Alley for the first time with Hagrid. In Star Wars, it would be when he takes off on the Millennium Falcon and leaves Tatooine finally, leaving the life of misery behind of the farmer's boy life. The next phase is the belly of the whale. And this is like a symbolic transition that the hero goes through as he crosses into the new world. The hero realizes his commitment at this point of the quest, and this is often forced upon the hero. He has no control over what happens. In Star Wars, it would be when the Death Star draws in the Millennium Falcon with a tractor beam. He's kind of forced to go through a series of challenges to save Leia. And then with Harry Potter, it would be with the Sorting Hat. It's a symbolic transition that puts him into a house. So Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Slytherin. Next, we go into the initiation phase. This first starts off with the Road of Trials, which are the series of tasks that the hero must undergo to achieve his or her goal. In Star Wars, it would be capturing Princess Leia and saving her from Darth Vader and the evil Empire. And to do this, they dressed up as stormtroopers in disguise and went through a series of gunfights. In Harry Potter, it's the steps that go into getting into the basement of Hogwarts to get the Sorcerer's Stone to save it from Professor Quirrell, which they did not know yet that Professor Quirrell was the bad guy, but they were still trying to do the right thing. The next part of the initiation is the meeting of the goddess. This hero may meet like a female figure who they find like a special bond with of some kind. This could be a special friendship, even though it's most often love, or it could even be like a special sibling figure. So with Harry Potter, it would most definitely be Hermione. She's encouraging to him, and she's a great friend and is by him the whole time. And with Star Wars, it'd be Princess Leia. She's most definitely the goddess figure of Star Wars and is something to be fought for. The next would be temptation away from the true path of the hero. This hero may meet like a temptation that distracts him from doing good. With Harry Potter, it'd be Voldemort trying to tell him, join me, and we can bring your parents back. With Star Wars, it'd be when Obi-Wan Kenobi was struck down by Darth Vader, and Luke wants to go take revenge on Darth Vader, and Han Solo's like, no, we have to leave. The next part would be atonement with the Father. If you break this down, it's at one with the Father, so it's a special relationship that the hero runs into with the Father figure. This could be a person, it could be immortal, or it could be symbolic Father figure. This always occurs at the climax of the story. In Star Wars, it'd be when Obi-Wan Kenobi speaks to Luke through the Force, saying, let go, Luke, use the Force, Luke. In Harry Potter, it'd be when he speaks to the Mirror of Erised and sees his parents in Mirror of Erised, and they're at one when he makes the connection and gets the Sorcerer's Stone into his pocket. The next part would be the ultimate boon. This is the climax of the story where the goal is ultimately achieved. In Star Wars, it'd be the destroying of the Death Star, and in Harry Potter, it would be when Harry Potter saves the day from the Sorcerer's Stone falling into evil hands of Voldemort and Professor Quirrell. The last part of the initiation is the apotheosis, and this is the point where the hero realizes that something great just happened. It's like a heavenly state, a state of enlightenment. This happens with Harry Potter when he's in the hospital wing, when he wakes up after falling unconscious. And in Star Wars, it's when Obi-Wan and Luke kind of share this like conversation through the Force, like the Force will be with you always, and Luke realizes what he just did. The final part would be the departure, and this would be under the return. So the first part that happens in the return is there's a refusal. The hero wants to stay in the place where they found bliss and enlightenment. And in Star Wars, he wants to stay with the rebels, and in Harry Potter, he wants to stay at Hogwarts. He doesn't want to go home to his aunt and uncle. And then oftentimes, in order to transition into the old world again, needs help. But often the rescue occurs before the return as well. The hero may need assistance to complete the quest, or he will need help returning to everyday life. In Star Wars, it's when Han Solo shoots down the TIE fighter, so Luke has a clear shot. But in Harry Potter, it's when the train takes him home. And then the crossing of the threshold finally happens, and the hero has to retain the wisdom they gain. So Harry Potter has to retain the wisdom from Hogwarts and apply it to his wizarding life outside of Hogwarts. And then Luke has to go on this journey to become a Jedi. He's going to use what he's learned to be the last Jedi Knight. And then the last part is they become a master of two worlds. The hero achieves a sense of balance between the two worlds. So with Luke Skywalker, he knows that he's got control of the Force now, and he's also a normal person, so he's going to use that to become a Jedi. And then in Harry Potter, it's when he realizes, I'm not going home, not really, even though he is, because he's a master of the world and the wizarding world as well. And then finally, each hero has the freedom to live at the end of the story, and with Harry Potter, it's significant and symbolic. When the train leaves, there's a time of peace, and the music is at its highest, and everybody's feeling good. And then in Star Wars, it's at the awards ceremony. Now, I hope that this has given you a new perspective on how to break down the hero's journey and apply it to the stories and films that we see each day. And I just want to thank you for this time.
In an ultimate world where the four elements, water, earth, fire, and air, are able to be controlled, an oppressive force known as the Fire Nation rules over the landscape in a ruthless manner. The Avatar is a central character. He lives to restore balance between the nations. However, there was another character who provides a subplot that exhibits a couple key Christian aspects. This character is Prince Zuko of the Fire Nation. Now, first off, why is this relevant? I believe it's relevant because if we tend to judge a show like Avatar: The Last Airbender based on some of its beliefs, we distance ourselves from our own faith, and we miss the underlying message of our own Christian faith. Avatar: The Last Airbender first premiered on Nickelodeon in 2005 and had its last episode in 2008. I have watched the show from the start, and I've watched the entire series around 5 times. I found a source online that relates why it's important to watch a show such as Avatar. The source was from a Christian Pathos website, and then I finally used the Bible for further justification that my comparisons apply to the Christian faith. My main points will include a general overview of Zuko's life and stories in the Bible that compare to his life. During our discussion, I will be able to focus on the theme of identity seen in Zuko's life, but first I must give an overview of his life. Once I do that, the Christian comparisons that I will present will be a lot easier to understand. First off, Zuko's early life. Zuko grew up in the Fire Nation. He grew up in the Fire Lord's house, and he was even able to attend a few war meetings. During one of the war meetings, he spoke out of turn because the general presented something that Zuko didn't believe was morally right. The leader lashed out on him, and he was given the punishment of having to fight an Agni Kai, which what an Agni Kai is where 2 firebenders fight each other, and the loser is inevitably severely burned. Zuko did not realize, though, that he would have to face his own father during this fight, because he spoke out of turn in the war room, it was him that he had disrespected. During the fight, Zuko pleaded with his father that he had the best interests of the Fire Nation at heart, and he meant no disrespect to him. But his father still said that you will learn respect, Prince Zuko, and suffering will be your teacher. By refusing to fight Zuko, he was banished to capture the Avatar. Only then could Prince Zuko restore his honor. The Avatar, in a way, gave Zuko hope. It was where he found his identity. Over the next few months, Zuko would search most of the world for the Avatar. He would see them in certain places, but he would never be able to capture them. His own sister approached him one day and said, "We should join forces and we should go capture the Avatar together." And Zuko's uncle tried to plead with him that this is not right and you should be following a different way. Azula said to Zuko, "It's not too late for you, Zuko. You can still redeem yourself." And his uncle pleaded with Zuko that the kind of redemption she offers is not for you. Azula responded back that at the end of the day, you will have your honor back. You will have your father's love. You will have everything you want. But in the end, Zuko would soon realize that that's not what he wanted. Over the next few weeks and the few months, Zuko returned home because he had fought the Avatar, and he was able to return home from that. During the Day of Black Sun, Zuko confronted his father because that was the only time he could actually confront his father because the firebender's bending was absent. During his encounter with his father, Zuko spoke his mind. He said that for so long, all I wanted was for you to love me. I thought it was my honor that I wanted, but really, I was just trying to please you. You, my father, who banished me for speaking out of turn. You, my father, who challenged a 13-year-old boy to an Agni Kai. And so Zuko decided to leave his father and leave his home and search for his uncle, whom he had just previously betrayed. Zuko eventually found his uncle, and one of the big things that stood out to him was, how am I going to reason with my uncle, who I had ashamed, who I had betrayed? And he basically thought, my uncle hates me. He did everything he could for me, but I still turned my back on him. When he first approached his uncle, he pleaded with him. He said, "Uncle, I know you must have mixed feelings about seeing me, but I am so sorry about what I did and ashamed of what I did. I don't know how I could ever make it up to you." But before Zuko can finish, him and his uncle embrace. His uncle forgives him in spite of what he did. And Zuko wonders, how can you forgive me so easily? I thought you would be furious with me. And his uncle says, I was never angry with you. I was sad because I was afraid you lost your way. But you found it again, and I am so happy you have found your way here. Now, since I gave a general overview of Zuko's life, I am now going to go into the ways this applies to the Christian faith and offer a couple Christian comparisons to it. The first one is the Apostle Paul. Zuko and Paul relate really well together because both of them hated certain people. and they later joined their causes. Zuko hated the Avatar. He, in a way, persecuted him, and he searched after him, trying to bring as much hate and malice as he could. Paul, on the other hand, persecuted Christians. He would chase after Christians, and he would do the same thing. And the second way Zuko and Paul relate to each other is that they both wouldn't let their past affect their new lives. However, in a way, they used their past for more good. For Zuko, it was when, at the end, he was promoted to be the Fire Lord, and he realized that the things that were in my past don't necessarily hurt me, but they help me. Because of the Fire Nation's malice and hate that they spread throughout the entire world, I can be the cause of greater good that can bring balance to our world. Paul, on the other hand, he spread the gospel, spread Christianity through the New World, even though he had persecuted Christians in the past. The last way that this Zuko story relates to the Bible is through the story of the prodigal son. Luke 15:17-24 reads, "But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat him and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate." Through Zuko's life, we see this action exhibited where his uncle was sort of his father figure. His real father wanted nothing to do with him, but his uncle was always there for him. And he still turned his back on him, but his uncle still welcomed him back despite of what he did. We can even see this in our own lives when we go through seasons where we distance ourselves away from God, but he still welcomes us back freely. In conclusion, this afternoon, we have deeply examined one of the subplots of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and we have found a few Christian comparisons with one of the central characters. Through Zuko, we see the characters of Paul and the prodigal son. The Christian Pathos website I mentioned earlier was written by Dunham. He said that even though The Last Airbender is rooted in Asian philosophies and religions, it is not an exact model of one. It's not strictly a Buddhist cartoon, though it clearly contains elements from Buddhism. It's a collection of elements and themes from various Asian religions and philosophies, but not one singular representation. What's most interesting for me is that in many cases the show reflects Christian concepts, particularly love and self-sacrifice. And in the end, we see those themes displayed through the life of Prince Zuko through identity. Thank you.
Alright, how many of you have ever heard of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, or FCA? Alright, quite a few hands, awesome, that's what I was hoping for. Well, I just want to tell you a little bit about how I got involved with it. My junior year of high school, our basketball team was pretty good. We went 20-0 in the regular season, so being in a small community is kind of a big deal, and everybody was really excited about it. And at one of our preseason games, there was the opposing team that we played. They asked us to pray after the game, just at half court, kind of like we do here for lots of grace events afterwards. And we prayed with them after the game. And once we got back in the locker room, we all kind of thought, well, that's really cool. Why isn't that something we just kind of continue on with? Because I went to a public high school and we never did anything like that. So it was something we decided we would do after every game, win or lose, and then ended up we went undefeated in the regular season. So it was really exciting to see people stick with it and to continue to be encouraging throughout the season. So that, along with our record, it was we found out that the leader for the Northwest Ohio FCA, he got in contact with our coach and asked if we had FCA at our school or not, and we hadn't. So long story short, we ended up getting FCA in our high school through our basketball team and just praying after games. So some of you might be asking, well, if it's something back in high school, why are we talking about it now in college? There's a magazine that FCA puts out every month that interviews college athletes or professional athletes and about their faith and why they believe what they believe, and it's as mentors to kids who are younger and people that kids look up to. So we can have an impact now, even though it's something that's going on in high schools today. For my sources, I use myself as a personal reference just through my different things that I've done with FCA, as well as the official website for FCA and the Fields of Faith website, which I'll talk about later. So today I'd like to cover FCA in high schools, as well as what is Fields of Faith and the Lady Lancer basketball camp that we have right here at Grace College through FCA. So FCA is an organization that works to reach students for Christ through the medium of sports. So getting kids excited about sports and learning different skills, and then sharing the gospel with them at the same time. So it was founded in 1954 by Don McClan, and it was designed, as I said, to present different challenges to athletic teams, and then through those challenges or different perspectives, then share the gospel with them. So we had someone come into some of our basketball practices and stuff. It was like 5 minutes afterwards, and they'd share a little lesson with us. So it was stuff like that is what they try and do. As I said, I had the opportunity to lead in the high school setting my senior year. I co-led they called them huddles, and it was just for the lunch period. Anybody who wanted to come, they could come. We had a designated classroom for the week, and we would come and just share a little lesson about something that maybe we saw a problem in the school we wanted to reach out about, or just something that we felt God had laid on our heart to share with our peers. So that was really cool. It was a time of fellowship and a time to just sit and share scripture and kind of where we were at in life. So it was really cool to get to know people that you're at school with, maybe on more of a personal level, but to also share your faith with them. So not only do they do things in the high school, FCA, they also work through on a more broad scale through Fields of Faith, which is it's a one-night event on the second week, or it's the second Wednesday of October every year, and it started out as just something really small, as most things do, and then it only expanded from there. So it was an idea started by Jeff Martin in 2007. He was praying for a way to impact his community, and he wanted to reach the youth in his community for Christ, and he didn't know how to do it. So he was praying boldly, praying for a way to change just the generation that was the younger generation of his community. And he was quoted as saying, "You can shift the momentum of the game and ultimately change your future." So where you are now doesn't have to be where you end up, but you can change that. You have the power to do that. And through his reading and scripture and praying, he found a passage in 2 Chronicles that he felt kind of God was leading him to, and I'll read it to you now. It says, "Then the king stood in his place and made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his status with all of his heart and soul, to perform the words of the covenant that were written in the book. And he made a stand that was present there in Jerusalem, and Benjamin took a stand. So the inhabitants of Jerusalem did according to the covenant of God, the God of their fathers. All these days they did not depart from following the Lord their God of their fathers." And as I said, that's from 2 Chronicles 34. So he took that and he meditated on it and just kind of let it sink in, and he took that to believe that where you're standing, it doesn't have to, as I said, you can change the outcome of where you are, and you can be bold to change things in the future. And that's what he wanted to tell and to convey to the youth in his community. And as long as you're doing things in God's will, God's only going to help you prosper. So his first event was, he got it organized, and it was spread out over 3 different states. And there were over 6,000 students that gathered over Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas. So it was a really big first event. It started out as kind of like a small idea, as I said. I had the opportunity, like I said, my community at home is really small, and there's only 3 schools in our county. But I had the opportunity to meet with a couple other group leaders from the other schools to organize it. It's just a night of fellowship on a larger scale than like our little huddle times at lunch. So I had the opportunity to read scripture and to meet with other leaders and stuff from the other high schools, and it was just a night to share testimonies and to pray for one another, and to draw closer to Christ than just worship. So it was a really cool experience to raise money and to see other like organizations and businesses in the community rally behind us, kind of. And since its start with Jeff, today it started out on 31 fields, and now it's expanded to over 337 fields. And it's impacting, there's thousands of kids every year that are reported dedicating their life to Christ, which is awesome. And as I said, it's only grown. So not only is FCA doing things on a national scale like that, but as I said, we have Lady Lancer basketball camp here on campus. I know there's other athletics that do things through FCA. They partner with them here at Grace, which is really cool. But just from personal experience for basketball, it was it was 1 week, not a weekly. It was 1 week event that it was just different. Young girls came and they stayed on campus with us. We stayed in Alpha for the week, which is an experience. Living in Westie, totally different. But so we stayed there and we had the chance to get to know the girls and play different games in the hall, not only teach them fundamental skills throughout the week, but to get to know them and who they are and where they're at in life. So that was really cool. And at the beginning of the week, we kind of did skill things, and then they were made into teams. So then you were assigned to a team, and you were the captain of that team, and well, I guess the coach, not the captain. And along with actually coaching, you had to lead different devotionals and stuff, which allowed girls to open up, and they were volunteering to pray and everything. So that was really exciting to see. I had the younger group. You kind of think you're only going to teach them, but they end up impacting you a lot. So that was really awesome, and it's a yearly thing here at Grace. So to wrap up, I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity to work with FCA through different mediums, different events on different scales, and do the program work in different settings. And I'd just like to conclude in saying that we can make a bigger impact than what we think if we can be bold and stand out, even though it's kind of scary sometimes, like standing in front of all of you, but just being courageous and being bold in what we do.
Alright, so I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about my brother. At age 12, my brother had thoughts of suicide. He was deeply depressed and didn't want to live any longer. I remember him crying when he came home from school because he didn't have any friends. There was no comfort to be given to my brother, and my mom tried to find out what was wrong with him. But not until she took him to the doctor did she really know what was wrong. My brother was diagnosed that day with depression and OCD. OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, is a serious anxiety-related condition where a person experiences frequent, intrusive, and unwelcome obsessional thoughts, often followed by repetitive compulsions, impulses, or urges. Why might this be relevant to all of you? Perhaps you joked about having ODC tendencies, or maybe people you know have certain disorders or illnesses. I know I have joked about OCD, and I made fun of my brother for having it, and I regret it now, but it is a serious disorder that might be overlooked because of like the degrees of OCD going from mild to severe, which at severe it's pretty much overtaking your life. So for my sources, I had a chance to interview my brother who has OCD, and so some of the insight I'm going to use is from him. And I also looked up on the internet for some websites that were supported by people who had OCD. And my brother surprisingly told me to look at Wikipedia, and we're always joking about, like, I always telling him that Wikipedia is not credible and stuff. He's like, yeah, I read through it, and that's what I experienced. So I read a little bit through Wikipedia. So today I would like to inform you all about like a little bit of the history of OCD, the certain compulsions and obsessions involved, and how you might like diagnose or know if someone you know might have OCD. So, starting with the history, OCD can be traced back to like the 1500s, where the term scrupulosity was popularized. This is like, so one person notable for having OCD or scrupulosity was Martin Luther, and he had, I guess, he thought about sin and not wanting to sin so much that like I guess he beat himself or had compulsions. But so he was one notable person who had, notable person who had OCD, and like the people tried so many things to cure themselves of their OCD. So they went to clergymen, which would be like the priests and stuff, and the clergymen wrote books which gave practical advice such as seeking company of other people and keeping oneself steadily occupied. So by doing this, people with OCD would think about what they're doing rather than their thoughts, which is the basis of like where OCD comes from. It's like something in the brain. It's really scientific. I don't want to get into it right now. And during the 1700s, people looked towards physicians with all their anesthesia and stuff. That was a joke, actually. It's no anesthesia. So physicians did what they knew to cure people, and by like bloodletting, which is like laying out blood for a certain amount of time. That's what they did to like in Washington. And then laxatives, and sometimes determining zodiac signs. That was bizarre. That might be. Asylums were used to house people suffering from OCD, but by the late 19th century, physicians reached a consensus that OCD was not a form of insanity. That's just a bit of information on how OCD has developed through the centuries, but now I'm going to go a little deeper on the certain compulsions and obsessions that people with OCD suffer. At age 9, my brother had his first compulsion. He was scared that this is the thoughts that were going through his mind. He was scared that his eyelashes were falling out, so he constantly picked at them to see if they were still there. So they did fall out. Currently, he spends hours in the restroom performing his rituals to make sure he is as clean as can be. I'd always get mad at him because I would always be late for school because me and my mother had to wait for him. We went to the same high school. I didn't know before, like researching this, that my brother OCD was such an important like mental disorder, and now I know like how a little bit of how serious it is. Like the obsession that goes through his mind is like contamination, or the fear of being dirty, and the compulsion is washing and cleaning your hands. So the thoughts that are going through his mind is that I just have to be clean, you know. So those thoughts are going through his mind, and he says that it's easier to give in to your compulsion than to not give in and have the intrusive thoughts overwhelming you. So that's what I did not understand. I told him to stop, don't wash your hands anymore. Like, oh no, that was bad for him, because he would just think about it and have to wash his hands or brush his teeth or something. He even it got ridiculous sometimes, because he'd get out of the shower and I'd like want to hug him or touch him and stuff. He's like, no, don't touch me, like, and I thought he was kidding, but no, he was being serious, because I found out during that interview. So yeah, other obsessions might be harm, which is like the obsession of the fear of harming others. Perfectionism. Some of you guys roommates might have perfectionism obsessions, which is like the concern with evenness or exactness. Unwanted sexual thoughts. Religious obsessions with like religion, such as Martin Luther had, which is like the excessive concern with right or wrong or morality. and the compulsions that like directly correlate, which would be checking, which is correlates with harm. Most people, well, maybe when you were young, you checked under the bed or something like that. Some people still do because they're scared of what might happen. Other compulsions are repeating or doing some things over and over again because they have the thoughts that go out of their heads. And another one is just mental compulsions where people are counting like they just have to end on like a certain number while they're doing something, which is kind of weird, I think. Alright, so you might start to notice yourself thinking about the thoughts that go through your mind, or perhaps the routine of someone on your hall or maybe in your family. Can you control your obsessions, or do they control how you live your life? Some of these questions are crucial to the diagnosis of people that may have OCD. So my brother went to the doctor and got had a formal diagnosis performed, which is performed by a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So to be diagnosed with OCD, you have to have obsessions and compulsions, which the obsessions are the thoughts that stay in your mind until you actually do the compulsion, which is time consuming. So don't be scared. You guys probably don't have OCD, because if your obsessions don't take time by your compulsions, then it's not really affecting your life. So unfortunately for my brother, there is no cure for OCD yet, but there are treatments and medications. He is currently taking a medication called fluoxetine for both depression and OCD, and he said that he also did behavioral therapy, which is learning how to tolerate the anxiety that it takes to resist not giving into the compulsion. So today I have given a brief history about OCD, explained a little bit about the certain types of obsessions and compulsions and that one might have, and I've informed you about the diagnosis that anyone can perform on themselves or others, which is the basic questions of what am I thinking about or am my obsessions controlling me, and am I acting on them? Are they taking time away from my life? So to finish my brother's story off, he still is living with OCD right now, but he is taking medication, and he's going to college, and he's in a play called Fiddler's Roof. So he's doing just fine, and so I'd like to end on the importance of being aware about OCD and other disorders that you might not have thought may be that serious, like I did, but they are. So that is it.
You're on.
Alright. You ever heard the word excruciating? Have you ever used it? I'm sure you have. Excruciating literally means out of the cross. Many of us don't know what out of the cross truly means, but through many books that I read about medical examiner's point of view, I'm going to shed a little light on the definition, since obviously crucifixion is not something that is used today. I will shed a little light on the process today. The crucifixion process started with scourging, which was a mock compassion designed to speed up the victim's death on the cross, because without it, they would hang on the cross a lot longer. A scourge was also called a flagrum, which had multiple tails of leather that was laced with bone and metal, designed to rip open the skin on the back and shoulders and legs of the victim. This is the picture here. You have leather cords here with bone and metal attached on the back. And then the actual process of scourging is the centurion would stand on the side and then just go right across his back. And then from pretty much here all the way down and here, all the way down the back of the legs, would all be ripped to shreds, to be honest. And from that pose, the victim was stripped naked and shackled at the wrists down low, so that the victim would be like this, and have the back exposed as much as possible. The victims would, and they writhed and rolled and trembled, twisted in agony, and they cried for mercy with each blow. Just brutal. Many victims died from the scourging alone, didn't even make it to the crucifixion. The cross and the shroud, written by a medical examiner, says the victim was reduced to an exhausted, mangled mass of flesh with a craving for water. Due to the massive blood loss, they were very dehydrated and craving water. Now that we've examined the process used for weakening the victim, now we can take a look at how they got to the cross. The carrying of the cross continued the torturing of the victim. Most times the victims only carried the cross beam. The main beam was already at the crucifixion site because they did so many crucifixions each day. They actually reused the crosses multiple times, so there would already be like dried blood on every cross, and so it was already sitting there waiting for them. They just had to carry the cross beam. It was either carried on their shoulder or strapped to their arms, and then it would be on their back, and it weighed about 75 to 100 pounds after being ripped to pretty much half of what they were before. And at this point, they were already in hypovolemic shock, which basically just means that they suffered major blood loss, and so they were in shock because their body was losing it so rapidly. Now, having seen the first two steps of the crucifixion process, we will unpack the details of the crucifixion itself. The final agonizing step of the punishment was the crucifixion. Getting the victim on the cross, they started with just a crossbeam and then nailed the victim's hand or wrist. That part is debated, but the one part that is not debated is the median nerve. It runs right down the middle of your wrist and then to about here, and then splits off. And this nerve is the one that they drove the nail through. So either here, pretty much anywhere from here to here, they put a nail through the most painful part. Then in the case for Christ, the pain is compared to your funny bone, but not just hitting your funny bone. Lee Strobel described it as taking pliers and squeezing and crushing your funny bone, and that's how much pain was in driving a nail through your hand. The crossbeam, then once they were nailed to the crossbeam, was hoisted up to the main beam and nailed to the main beam. And according to the cross and the shroud, there would have been about 175 to 250 pounds of pull on each arm pulling down, because he's like this, and so then the pull right in here was about 175 to 250 pounds. And the result of this, each arm was stretched about 6 inches, and both shoulders were dislocated. Then once the cross had been constructed and they were secured up there, the feet were nailed, and they actually found a heel bone. This is a heel bone with a nail through it. So with this, it kind of brings debate as to whether they nailed with both feet with one nail for each foot, or with this picture, it was from the side, so then it would be 1 foot on each side of the cross and then nailing sideways. And then the sheer agony, once everything had been put in place, the victims on the cross would then have their feet nailed, their hands nailed, and in Jesus' case had a crown of thorns on his head. And then to breathe, he had to push up, which would be using the force from the nails securing through the bones of his feet. And so then there's pain there. And then when he exhaled, then the pain on his hands and then resting on his feet again caused extreme pain. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, the word excruciating was created because of this. They didn't have a word to describe the pain on the cross, so they said, we'll make a new word called excruciating to describe the pain. And then they were up there with constant cramps, intense thirst, hunger, sleeplessness for several hours or even days. And then finally the victim would succumb due to asphyxia from eventually their breaths just got shorter and shorter over that time. In conclusive review, the process of crucifixion involves scourging before the cross, carrying the cross, and finally the actual hanging on the cross. Now, whenever you read about Jesus being crucified in the Bible, you have a clear picture of the agony and suffering he endured.